I'm just going to give you a little background here. So what I'm going to be talking about today is this intersection between alchemy, gnosis, and the subtle body, and navigating the in-between in Kabbalah. And the Kabbalah, I use it as a map. So it's not a traditional way of working with it. It's very much, as you'll see, it's a way of linking these energies of cosmos, psyche, and matter through this map. So just to begin, I'm going to read a little bit of what I've put together here about our time. In our time, gnosis is necessary. It's knowledge to open the portal to receiving this new consciousness that is pushing its way through this time of incredible turbulence, as in a cosmic birth canal. We are in a cosmic birth canal. And that, of course, also extends to our physical and our psychic channels. So it's an experience of the divine in the intermediary space between psyche and body. That's the subtle body, or what Jung also referred to it as the psychoid. And this is whether it be the body of our physical container or the body of the earth or that of the stone, which we call the philosopher's stone on the prima materia, both. The intermediate energy between psyche and matter, as I mentioned, is what Jung also called the psyche, the psychoid, and it's also detailed in G.R.S. Mead's on the book of that title, on the subtle body. So it's activated through dreams, divination, active imagination, which Jung developed, synchronicities, and through ritual, art, dance, music, and anything that accesses the vibrational actions that take root in physical realm and the in-between simultaneously. But we'll get more into that. So we can say that the earth is interacting with these cosmological forces of transformation, creating a disruption and eruption, and all of the accompanying shifting, changing landscapes, both outside of ourselves and within. The transformation of consciousness is never achieved through an intellectual process alone. It must be accompanied by an emotional charge of change, and holding the balance through the heart and navigating through what we will see is the middle pillar on the tree, allows us both a bird's eye view, which invites us to manifest it through emotion and through the body. So alchemy as a language describes this intermingling, and we can also project this onto an understanding of the astrological precession of ages, because we're hovering right now between what has been called the age of the fishes, the Piscean age, which is approximately 2,160 years, and the beginning of the age of Aquarius, which is the age of humanity and linking us into something, well, we can talk about that, but it's one of the ways it's described is through linking up through energies. And here we are on the internet, so this is very Aquarian already. So Jung was talking about the alchemists and how he discovered this process of alchemy, which we'll get into. The alchemists were projecting through their experiments onto the physical objects their philosophical and spiritual search, whether they were conscious of this or not, because they had no psychology as we know it today. So they inadvertently activated their own unconscious psychological processes, changing them while simultaneously activating the alchemical transformations, which commingled psyche and matter. And that is the subtle body. The goal of alchemy was to make philosophical gold, which is a metaphor for changing dense unconscious matter, the prima materia, into an animated living essence, which has been called the philosopher's stone. And we won't be getting into a lot in this discussion, but perhaps certainly down the road in the Gebser conference. So the term the psychoid then refers to this realm between psyche and matter, psyche soma, and is also approached in Jung's Zarathustra lectures, but first encountered in his experience of active imagination, which of course he described in the Red Book. So his own encounters with the imaginal figures that came to him and made conscious and manifested throughout his life and work via his bringing them into form through dialogue, art, and of course the written word. He thereby gave them life and paved the way for us and showing us the way that psyche and soma are intermingled. So I'm going to begin then to move forward because there's quite a lot here. As some of you know, I tend to have a lot of slides, and I've actually cut it down to a mere 40. So the great problem, this is from Jung speaking, of our time is that we don't understand what's happening to the world. We're confronted with the darkness of our soul. Our hitherto believed values decay accordingly, and our only certainty is that the new world will be something different from what we are used to. We stand on the threshold of a new spiritual epoch, and that's the Aquarian Age. And from the depths of our own psychic life, new spiritual forms will be born. So here we are. Jung often, speaking of prophetic, is so prophetic. So this is a little of what I'm covering. How do we hold the paradoxical tension of opposites to receive the gnosis, which is the knowledge that is the birthright of each of us at this moment of chaos and transformation as we move from the ion of Pisces into the aeon or age of Aquarius. So at this Kairos moment, which is this moment, this perfect moment, as we navigate between worlds, can we receive the gnosis as knowledge to aid us individually and collectively in our journey toward a wholeness, which includes psyche and soma? What is the relationship of gnosis to Jung's psychoid realm, the subtle body? And how do we experience the subtle body? And how does it connect us to an integration of psyche and body? Through our brief investigation of the map of the tree of life, we may find links to the above and below, because it is a hermetic view, as in Hermes, to the inner and outer, and ultimately to the unus mundus, which is a return to the one world. So I'm going to move forward. And so here's the diagram of the tree that I also often use. And we're only going to be looking at a few of these spheres. These are what I'll call the sephira on the tree of life, which correspond to both cosmological, planetary, the chakra system, and the elemental systems, depending on which level you're looking at it from. But we're only going to be looking at the middle. We're going to be looking at this sphere. This is Kether, the crown, which is the one light. You could say it's the Big Bang, where the first spark of life comes through. And it then navigates into this hidden sphere called Doth, which we're going to get into. And this sphere, which is traveled in tarot, which I often will include as a divinatory method, is the place where the gnosis or the knowledge, the experience of knowledge comes through. So if you were to imagine that this is the body, then you could say this is coming through here in the throat area, and but it's a download from the one light. So it's a gnosis. The middle sphere, the golden one, is the gold. It's also the heart. It's also what in the cosmological way you might call the Buddha consciousness, the Christ consciousness, the place where the knowledge lands when we're in perfect balance. And what we're going to be talking about is the purple sphere, which is the sphere of the subtle body. So as you can see, there are different layers as we get closer to Earth. Now, Earth is the one which is divided into the four sections, and so it is the most dense in color. And you'll notice that the top is completely colorless. This is beyond, this is the divine, it's beyond even the archetypal. And then we descend into time and space through the primary colors, and these begin to mix, and we become denser and denser as we come closer to matter, to the body. And we are talking, the subtle body would sit here between we're receiving the energy from this first light through this hidden gnosis, the through this experience of the subtle body, which is between it actually is the link between soma, the body, and psyche. So that's just an overview there. So this is just the question, how does the Kabbalistic Tree of Life offer us a map for understanding the penetration of gnosis into the subtle body and linking and illuminating psyche soma as one? So here we see a more comprehensive map of the tree where you can see it very clearly, that this hidden sphere that we're talking about, knowledge, is called Doth, which is also astrologically linked to Pluto, which is a place of transformation. It's death and transformation, but it's also the place where we have the experience of, if we're fortunate in receiving at different times in our life, this really powerful knowing that comes through. And it's not a knowing that is coming through the intellect, it's a knowing that is coming through an experience. And that then coming down the middle pillar, um, the subtle body here would be this receiving this, because the entire tree, as we could say, is being held. It's called the foundation. Yesod, which is linked to the moon as we go down, holds the entire experience, and that very subtle astral, whatever, there are many, many names for this fear. We experience it when we're going for an acupuncture treatment, or we're receiving homeopathy. We experience it in the extraordinary synchronicities. And it is the area where dreams and art and music and all of this is experienced, and it is then brought down into what they call the kingdom, what's called the kingdom, which is ideally bringing the spirit into matter. And if we complete that process, it is the unus mundus, the one world. Well, actually, the one world is reconnecting the entire experience of the tree. So I hope, I mean, we'll have time for questions. So, what is alchemy, and how does Jung's understanding of alchemy inform our psychological processes in coming to wholeness? And we've looked at that a little bit, but now I'm going to, here's an alchemical image, which I've discovered this week, and is a really interesting one. You can see, oh, I've got a, excuse
Yeah,
me.
hang on. I need to mute somebody. Oops, where did she go? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, yeah, I had a, yeah, two voices. So it's split. So you can see the image of the tree right here, and how, and of course the tree has this kind of a snake-like spiral, which is called the serpent path, going up the tree, and then coming down the tree. It's often called the lightning path. But here we can see different elements that the that might have been used by the alchemists in trying to find the gold, which is the center, and bring spirit into matter. So I just was drawn to this image. And here's what Jung has to say about this tree. He and the alchemist. So the alchemist saw the union of opposites under the symbol of the tree, and it's therefore not surprising that the unconscious of present day man, who no longer feels at home in his or her world, and can base his existence neither on the past that is no more, nor the future that is yet to be. The alchemist saw, okay, so this is a repeat, I apologize. That my mistake. So in the history of symbols, this tree is described as a way of life itself, a growing into that which eternally is and does not change, which springs from the union of opposites and by its eternal presence also makes that union possible. It seems as if it were only through an experience, that's the key word, of symbolic reality, and that's the gnosis. The man vainly seeking his own existence and making a philosophy out of it can find his way back to a world in which he is no longer a stranger. So here he's speaking to the dissociation that we are experiencing in our time, this separation from the experience of connection to the oneness, to the divine that we've seen in our culture, certainly in the Western culture for many years. This is from psychological types. So moving forward, again, alchemy as a nature philosophy is of great consideration in the Middle Ages. And it throws a bridge to the past, the gnosis, and also to the future, the modern psychology of the unconscious. So this is where Jung went beyond anyone else. And because the psychology that we use today is an ego psychology. And this is not so much an ego psychology because it includes the transcendent. So Jung discovered this through studying alchemy, which came to him through Wilhelm, when Wilhelm, the synchronicity, of course, is he was working on the Red Book, and his image of this Chinese image was then reflected synchronistically when Richard Wilhelm brought him The Secret of the Golden Flower. So Jung, then that opened the door, as some of you know, and he says, only by discovering alchemy have I clearly understood that the unconscious is a process, and that ego's wars with the unconscious and his contents initiate an evolution, or more precisely, a real metamorphosis of the psyche. So here's Jung himself. So
I was looking for something in between,
can you
something
hear?
that linked that remote past with the present moment. And I found, to my amazement, it is alchemy. It is the basis of our modern way of perceiving things. And therefore, it is as if it were right under the threshold of consciousness. This is a wonderful picture of how the development of archetypes, that means the movement of archetypes, looks, when you look upon them as if from above, maybe from today, you look back into the past and you see how the present moment has evolved out of the past. And we can construct or even predict our the unconscious of our days when we know what it has been yesterday.
That's Jung on the subject. And here we have an alchemical image from I believe, the 17th century, 16th, actually, it is the 17th century here, by Mylius, 1622. So we can see that we won't get into this around, but here's an image of the tree. And this process, these alchemical process, starting with this breakdown of the, let's say psychologically, the egoic state, or breakdown of that unconscious matter, and this process that goes through these different phases, 7 of them, ultimately 8, because we return back to the beginning on another level. So here at the crown, at the top of the tree, we've been talking of the crown, we see a conjunction, which has been called the alchemical wedding, but that's not the end. Then we continue through a deeper processing, more again, from dissolution to a fermentation process to eventually coming through to arising out of into a new consciousness. We can see here the figures of king and queen. We have the alchemical, the sun and moon, which are also related to king and queen. And so it's just an overview of the entire Hermetic process, which we're not going to get into, but just Jung saw this alchemical process as our psychological process, as he's describing. So here, what is Gnosis? And this is a map that I created. It's not necessarily precisely accurate, but it gives you a psychological map for a little bit of what we're talking about here. And you can see that coming out of, in fact, the archetypal world on one level, but it's actually even beyond the archetypal. It's the world of spirit. We're entering through the collective unconscious, through this gnosis that we don't know where it comes from. But it's an experience that once you have it, you can't deny. And intersecting, Jung would have called this potentially the self, the soul. And the ego consciousness is this place where we begin to connect that subtle body, where I have persona with the physical realm, this kind of fluidity that happens as the two of them intersect and intermingle. You can see in this Dore painting, it's not actually a painting, it's yeah, lithograph or whatever it is here, but based on Dante's Divine Comedy, and looking out, receiving the light, but standing right at the edge, which we certainly that is the place where the gnosis would come be, where all the angels, heaven and hell, where this is Dante and Beatrice looking out into that light. So here is the symbol for Doth, which is knowledge. It's related to the planet Pluto, because it is a place where this gnosis, this knowledge can come through, but it is a place of transformation. Now, in tarot, which I work with, it's something I enjoy working with, that particular transit that is made from the realm that I showed you, we were looking at, the spirit realm, that triad, down, that crosses, is the high priestess, is the one who crosses the abyss. Notice she's unmanifest. Her number is 2. And she symbolizes, she's carrying that knowledge. Her name in Hebrew is Gimel, which means camel. And over here, you can see that she has crossed the desert with the camel. This moved forward. Here is another image here of this movement, again, from the above below. You could say this is the same movement that we see on the tree. This kind of spiral motion going above and beyond. And we travel this over the course of our lives on many, many levels. So what is the subtle body? So here, again, this is from Nietzsche's Zarathustra. And I'm going to be incorporating, as we move down, some of the work of Marian Woodman, who was my teacher for many years, because in our work together, this is the volume that we studied because Marian discovered that this is where Jung began to speak of psyche and soma, psyche and body, as being one, intersecting. And so all of our work, our creative work, our dream work, of bringing that which was residing in the depths of our unconscious, of our traumas, we were able to get reflection on, again, a moon image, by working with art and music and movement. So here Jung speaks to this as part of the unconscious, which is designated as the subtle body, becomes more and more identical with the functioning of the body, and therefore grows darker and darker. Because as we come closer to the body, to matter, it's dark. Somewhere our unconscious becomes material because the body is the living unit and our conscious and our unconscious are embedded in it. They contact in the body, they contact the body. So somewhere there's a place where the two ends meet and become interlocked. And that is the subtle body, where one cannot say whether it's matter or what one calls psyche. And it's a good thing to become aware of this as we go through life, that psyche is always intermingling with matter and matter with psyche. So what we experience in our body is also being influenced by our dreams and by the synchronicities. So everyone, of course, is quite familiar with this. This image. And you can see here the alchemist is actually bridging these two worlds. I think this would be an accurate depiction of how the psychoid realm, the subtle body, operates, where he's in both worlds. Here's just an image of the Earth and its moon. And here again, a depiction of the subtle body, this interaction between the worlds, the emotional world, the reflective aspect of the lunar and the Earth. So Jofra Boschart's wonderful image here of this same thing. We can see here it is an image, I would say, of the high priestess, or she is receiving the light from that realm. And as you can see, it's she's sitting there with the spiral. So she's both reflecting it and holding it, and also being a bridge between worlds. And our bodies are that bridge. So here we have that purple sphere, Yeso, the foundation, which we've been speaking of. And it is violet in color, which also, when Jung speaks of this spectrum, he speaks of this red, which is definitely more connected to the earth, rubedo, perhaps, which is the reddening phase, but also to the sphere of body, whereas this is much more ethereal the violet sphere. So here we've covered some of this: synchronicity, dreams, active imagination, divination. They're all part of what is called the subtle body. So when we have an experience, for instance, of synchronicity, that is such a perfect example. Synchronicity, by the way, also comes through any one of these realms, but specifically when you're having experience on the physical plane of something that's coming through from somewhere else and they intersect. So synchronicity is a really lovely way to describe the experience of the subtle body. Dreams, of course, although in dreams we have to use the process of active imagination to bring that into consciousness. And active imagination then through dialogue, through enacting, we would bring the dream images, or the images can also, of course, come from visions, and also from psychedelic experiences, into um, beginning to Jung dialogued with these figures that came through in his visions, and then made contact with them and discovered that they were living embodied beings that had their own uh, they had their own life, and it wasn't something that he made up. So divination, of course, divination methods, whether it's the I Ching or whether it's tarot, whether astrology to some extent, and many other divination methods, rely on the synchronicity, because you're actually taking something in a physical plane and you're attaching meaning to it, just as the alchemists did. And this dance happens. You could call it a figure eight kind of energy, which is moving between that which is in the subtle area, and interacting with the physical realm. And of course, physics has a lot to say about that now. So this is just an image of, I found that puts us in the center of that sphere, as above, so below. So now in some of Marian's work, which was all of Marian Woodman's work, was very much connected to this work of linking to the subtle body. Because for her, her own addiction, which was her anorexia, was very much this yearning for spirit. And so that she would literally leave her physical body. And it eventually took a toll. So she had to learn how to receive this spiritual energy that she was so drawn to, and make her physical body strong enough to be able, and her ego self strong enough to be able to receive this. So she says, this, for me, that subtle body within my physical body is the receiver that can receive that transcendent experience of the divine. So that's the Gnosis right there. And certainly she was a channel for that. And yeah, strengthening the subtle body through art is, and everything else we've talked about, is really part of the process of individuation. Here we see another of the medieval images here, Earth as Prima Materia by Mylius, and I just added in. You see this divine child being held by this figure. The figure's feet are definitely unusual, but they seem to be planted in water. So we have the elements here, because in alchemy we have earth, water, fire, and air coming together. And we can see the fire and air elements on these two sides. And the connection, whenever we see in alchemy the connection between the sun and the moon and the earth, we know that we're in this realm of the lunar is the subtle body. It's the linkage, because it reflects the solar light, and then grounds it. So Malkut, which is the earth Sephira on the tree, is where you can see it is divided into four. You will see this in all the indigenous cultures as well. The air, fire, earth, and water. And then there is, of course, a fifth, which is spirit. And and also we can get into that another time, the quintessence. But here it represents earth receiving all of these energies. So again, from psychology and alchemy, this is a really, really poignant and important quotation, I think. Jung says here, but the moment when physics touches on the untrodden, untreadable regions, and when psychology has at the same time to admit that there are other forms of psychic life besides the acquisitions of personal consciousness, which is ego. In other words, when psychology too touches on an impenetrable darkness, then the intermediate realm of subtle bodies comes to life again. And the physical and the psychic are once more blended in an indissoluble unity. We have come very near to this turning point today. And that was written when he wrote Psychology and Alchemy. Some of you know specific dates, but we are seeing that extended into our day. Clearly, this is Jung working on his stone, which was as an alchemist throughout the course of his life, as he was able to, he worked on bringing the work into form, into the stone. So this is the prima materia becoming the philosopher's stone, which was certainly Jung's individuation journey. So here we have something from Richard Tarnas, resonant on the same, pointing to this as well. He says the world is animated by the same psychological resonant realities that the human being experiences within. The human soul participates in a world soul, or anima mundi. And the language that articulates that anima mundi in all its flux and diversity is the language of myth, the archetypal language of the human psyche. Many particulars of the empirical world are all intrinsically endowed with an archetypal significance, mythic and numinous, and the significance flows between inner and outer, self and world, without any absolute distinction. So, I mean, this passage, I think, links them all together. And this card, which is the last card in, this is, of course, I've used the Doth tarot because it is inclusive not only of the Kabbalistic tree, but also includes many of the astrological symbols. Here we see what I think of as the Anima Mundi and the Universe card, also called the World card, and it's relegated as to the planet Saturn, which is a contraction. It has to do with limitation and bringing to Earth. And here is the Anima Mundi that is being spoken of in the passage before. We have the divine returned, the animated stone, that which has is now a living, and because it's connected. You see, it's connected from the very top of the tree with that eye, is connected through the serpent energy and through this cosmological spiral energy throughout, with the four elements, because this is, of course, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo, which are the four fixed signs of the zodiac, depicting the four air, fire, earth, and water. And here we have an image of how this might look in the body. And we can see the caduceus, the masculine and feminine dancing together here. And we contain this. I mean, this particular image is shows the entire chakra system down the middle pillar body. And some of the things I like to work with, if you can see this, is when we back into the tree, the atom kadmon, which is the name for the microscopic or macrocosmic, I should say, macrocosm and human actually. And when we back into the tree and relate to this as a chakra system, then it becomes, we are the microcosm of the macrocosm, and we link it. What we've been talking about, the entire tree, you can see where it sits on the body. This is Doth. It's actually named here, even though it is the hidden sphere, the one of knowledge. And coming down, this is this area, which is the genital area here, is the place of Yesod. It's the place of the foundation and the subtle body. The subtle body actually would be the linking here, where it links to the feet. So we're rooted between heaven and earth. And of course, Jafra Bastard, which I always use because it's one of my favorite images, because you can see the entire thing depicted here. The left side of the tree, you see the lunar, which is the feminine, the great goddess. It is connected to what we call Saturn, which has to do with earth, what did it say? Contraction. The contraction energy as opposed to the expansive energy of the sun, we have the king and the queen. He's holding a sphere, a spear, a wand. She's holding a cup. So we have the feminine and the masculine, if you like, the yang and the yin dancing together. And of course, Mercurius wrapped, the above is below, wrapped here in that serpent energy, erupting at the top and the crown, as we could see on the tree, and being held in this lunar place by the feminine. And she is holding here, she is holding and receiving and grounding. You can see by her hands are down, whereas the figure at the top, the hands are up. She's grounding the energy. So in a sense, the feminine receives. She's the receptor and grounds the energy. I think this is also pretty comprehensive, because she also it also shows here on nature and the wild, natural part of nature here, but also you have the cube and the sphere and the triangle, which is for another day. We have here his souls being subject to time and space, because Saturn is also connected to time and space, going in and coming out, and Saturn also being the feminine, being the creator and destroyer of form, both. And then these rivers, of course, that move between, and so it's just an extraordinary image, I think. But it depicts very much the movement of the energies. And here's another one by Jake Badley, where we see a kind of a crucifixion of the feminine, but she's holding she's bringing the illumination down through her body, and we see her with the serpent energy, and also the cup on the moon, connecting the realms. And then Marian Woodman, again here, in Conscious Femininity, the wisdom in the cells, the light in matter, that's the subtle body. So this came from an interview with Tammy Simon of Sounds True, which I was not aware of. I discovered it in my research this last week. She apparently interviewed Marian Woodman in the year 2000. That was about the time that I was working with her. And this is available as a podcast on Insights from the Edge. And I had never seen this before. And but here it speaks to what we're talking about here, which was Marian's whole life's work and what she passed on to those of us who worked with her. So that the humanity of the body, and also, of course, the sheer joy of the body, the sexuality, the resonance you feel in music, when you feel that music going right through you from top to bottom, color, go into an art gallery, go into the woods to paint your own pictures. The senses are so magnificent. And so to be a human being for me is to have that perception in the body, but also to have it illumined by spirit, so that the whole being is the instinct illumined by spirit. The two go together, that coming together of matter and spirit as a totality. So that you learn as much as you can from your painting, your writing, your dancing, and all the creative fire that brings all this energy. You do the best you can through the world of the imagination. The imagination is the bridge between spirit and matter. And the imagination is the bridge, period. I mean, even in Ruland, he speaks of the imagination as the star in man, the celestial or super celestial body. So the imagination is what actually gets activated, or what comes through this experience of gnosis. It bridges. And here's another of the Jofra Boss charts, which is much clearer. So I won't say much about this, as you can see. This, what we've been talking about. And again, as we're getting closer to the closing here of Marian speaking, the body has a wisdom of its own, however slowly and circuitously that wisdom manifests. Once it is experienced, it is a foundation, a basis of knowing that gives confidence to the ego. To reach its wisdom requires absolute concentration, dropping the mind into the body, breathing into whatever is ready to be released, and allowing the process of expression until the negative, dammed up energy is out, making room for the positive energy, genuine light to flood in. So I think that's a beautiful way of expressing this process of bringing, and the foundation, of course, is what the lunar experience is. It receives the penetration of the light, and we can express it through, certainly through our meditation, but through all of these other channels. So, whoops, I don't know what just happened there. Excuse me. Am I still sharing screen here?
There we go.
Oh, it just came back.
Oops, I guess that I don't quite know what happened. That's not really where it ends. So I'm not.
Can you escape out of presentation
Oh,
mode?
here it is.
Here we go.
Okay, I had to move forward in a different way. So I was not intentionally planning to bring Marian in, but I guess she wanted to be brought in into this talk. So the goddess is the unspeakable wisdom that grows into the very cells of the body. She lives with the sacramental truth at her center. The beauty and the horror of the whole of life are blazing in her love. She is dancing in the flames. And that is from Dancing in the Flame, which was written by Marian Woodman and Eleanor Dixon, The Dark Goddess in the Transformation of Consciousness. And this is a photograph I took of Marian at her tribute when she passed her work onto Pacifica's archives in 2006. And that's it. And this is my information, should you want that. And I'm going to stop the share.
Well, thank you, Eva. Always you have really amazing images in your presentation.
Thank you. I mean, the images, as I said, are one of the ways that this comes through. It activates the imagination. So we can go back to any of these, or please, let's open it up to discussion and questions. I'd love that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would you care to comment on the relationship between myth and emotion?
Wow. That's between myth and emotion.
Yep.
Um, that's a really interesting question. Would you like to say a little bit more about that before I respond?
Well, I have noticed in my own experience that they seem to go together, and I'm not really sure what their relationship is, but emotion tells stories that I don't know how to explain it. That's why I'm asking
Yeah,
you to explain
I
it.
think that, when we were talking previously, I think the myth, um, if we don't experience the emotion, there's no change, right? The emotion is always necessary for it to come to life.
Yeah, it's like it informs us about myth in a way. It's it's a weird thing, and I've never heard it talked about anywhere.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it is. I mean, someone else might have a clearer
I'm
way,
sure
but I think that in all mythologies, because mythologies are the archetypal energies. So what might be coming through in what we call this gnosis is the archetypal energies as they um as they translate in the subtle body, right? Because emotion is it's not just feeling, because in the Jungian sense, feeling is not emotion.
it tells stories.
Exactly. Yeah. So you answered it. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So it tells the story, and the stories um, illuminate the imagination, and these story without they speak to us because of the emotion. Would you say they
Say
speak to
that
us
again.
because we have an emotional response to them?
You know, that's what I can't really sort out how anything acts on anything else, like which one's the cause, and I can't make cause and effect out of it, and I can't say what the relationship is, only that I have noticed that there is one, and they go together. And I've seen
Well,
it in
Well,
in
I
my
don't think that it is a cause and effect thing, as we were just saying, like all of what we looked at, which was sort of a spatial, but the actual experience of what we've talked about is not spatial. So mythology, you might say, would be a way that the story and the images that come through from these other realms get translated so that we can relate to them. But what you're saying is, yes, there is no cause and effect. It's a
It isn't like
synchronicity.
that.
It's all happening simultaneously.
Yeah, and it makes it hard to talk about.
And maybe we don't need to talk about it,
Perhaps
you
not.
know, because the story contains that within itself. You can't talk about an experience of gnosis. It's not something that's possible to talk about in language, because it's an experience of the spiritual. Um, and without the feeling, without the emotion, we wouldn't change, right? That's what changes us.
Yeah, maybe the myth is a metaphor so that you can talk about it and maybe somebody will understand a little bit of it if they get the metaphor.
I'd like you to, if you feel like it, state concretely a myth that has meaning for you. What do you mean by myth concretely? A story or a myth pattern that you experienced that
Um,
is emotionally affecting for you. I'm just curious.
yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Something that's actually happened to me recently. That one doesn't have an insight connected to it yet.
Does anyone want to speak to the myth? I mean, the myth is something, as they say, that is archetypal. It's pointing to something that is always happening but never was. So it's not real in the sense of the physical plane, but it certainly exists in these realms that we're talking about in between.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you think you've hit all of the key pieces. One that's important, and it was in your slides, imagination. I think myth always evokes within us imagination. We're in imagination, and the myth is in us. And of course, a root of imagination is image, and which is the other thing that myth always evokes within us. And those images are affect laden. And once you have an image that's affect laden, you're really entering that archetypal realm. So the emotion, emotion, it gets you moving. That's what myths do. They move you. Mike.
When I would say in a mood, there's a storied field that has a mood. It's affective, right?
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't enter into this on the tree, but the bottom of it, where the purple sphere is, there's a green one, and then there's another one on the other side that's orange. And the green one is connected to imagination. It's all part of that subtle body realm, really, of imagination and then thought, and how they all, and absolutely, I mean, that whole lunar thing, imagination, and imagination is the key to everything. I think that's right. Yeah, without imagination, we wouldn't. It's almost like it is the metaphor between.
Well, it speaks in metaphor.
Yeah, and it's not just visual.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
It feels to me almost like, I can't come up with a concrete example right now, I'm sorry, John. I'll think about it and I'll come up with one later, because there aren't many. It feels to me as though emotion is almost like an energy that illuminates stuff in imagination, or something like that.
Right. Yeah. 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 So
Your statement implying interaction, movement, energy.
Yes.
I would say maybe I could offer this one for your consideration. I just had a meeting down in San Luis Obispo with friends, but driving back up Highway 101, I had a very profound sense, I think I would say, of the myth of California. All along Highway 101 are those rather bizarre bells that mark the El Camino Real, the historic highway. I don't care for those symbols. So it was, despite those bells, the Californians probably in the discussion now know these bells that I'm talking about. But it was deeper than that. It wasn't that. And I had dinner last night near Mission San Luis Obispo, and then passed the various missions on the way up, back up here to Monterey, the soul of California. Mission San Miguel, it's all of them. But I felt the myth of California, I think, is a concise enough way to put it. And it was really almost more than I could bear. It was very, very intense. And then to drive through the country itself, and then the big vineyards, you know, hundreds of acres of grape vineyards, and then all the work in the Salinas Valley and the field workers. So the myth of California, I don't know, the myth of Hotel California, I mean, is that what I'm talking about? Welcome to Hotel California. Right, it's all that and more. But I felt it very deeply. And actually it was, I mean, it was a mixture. It was
So what was the emotion connected with the myth of California?
as I experienced it today. Well, there's both hands, as in the images that you showed, Eva. You know, I can use simple verbal expressions. I also have some history in California myself and in my family going back at least 2 generations. And a certain mystery and discovery still, like this country, you know, is just to be discovered. It has been discovered. It has been exploited, but it's alive. Much life, much energy, and I think frightening, and then also, and yet I was struggling, and I don't need, you know, I just got finished with this trip, so the affect is still very strong. But I was desperate. Did I say desperate? I very much wanted to feel centered, to feel a belonging unto death. You know, where is my center here? But not really in a persona sense. Where is a center here? A home where I can live. Fortunately, I found it right here. Here we are, right here at this table. But at any rate, I'm just trying to illuminate concretely one example of a mythic emotion, very palpable. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I think you just spoke to everything that Eva just said. The whole presentation you encapsulated in your experience, and I'm thinking it's one of transformation, and transformation is not static. So it's always changing, and it's in its dynamic nature, and we have to grasp with the fact that it is ever changing. Mm-hmm. So home is a relative thing. A place is a relative thing, and I think Eva speaks to that in this process, and those wonderful images.
Well, I think ultimately the home is our body. Like wherever we are, we're at home in our body, and I think that our journeys individually bring us back to feeling at home in our bodies, right? I mean, I think.
Yes, that's an interesting statement. You know, when I've traveled different places in the world, not just in the country, I'd get to this place and I would wander around for a while in the place, and I would say, this is home. I can be home here. This is home, wherever that is. And I would come back and say, and then I come back to my physical, home, and say it's amazing that kind of experience where you can say wherever you are can be home. And I think that's just what you said, Eva. Is the home? The body is the home, ultimately. Whatever else is happening.
Eva, I have a question. How do you work with the tree, or how do you work with someone with the tree? You know.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I mean, when you're in, where one of the things I've done online is we've done an exercise where we've backed into the tree using the tree as a chakra system. So you're experiencing the different energies. Of course, like the chakra system traditionally doesn't use the two sides. But the tree is a chakra system, so it uses the two sides as well. So I would work with the three levels of the cosmos, psyche, and matter. Being the cosmological, we might talk about the interactions of the planetary energies, for instance. Like Saturn, we were talking about being a contracting energy, and then Jupiter being an expansive energy. And so how does that play out in the yin and yang of our daily lives? So that's one way. And then, of course, more specifically, it's an actual through ritual that we can do individually. But, in an actual workshop space, we might actually bring it through working with dreams, through art, through movement, and music, which again, music being something, right, that is always, brings up emotion, it's always moving. So it's sound and image, incorporating that, I think.
You start in a particular part of the tree and work through it, or do you?
Well, when we were backing into the tree in the workshops, we would start at the top and we would do a meditation where we would open the crown, which is Cathar, the crown, and we would bring this energy down in this way, back and forth, through and down into the ground, ground it, send it down deep into the iron core of the earth, so to speak, bring that energy down, ground, and then bring it back up through the heart and open. Yeah. Music and art help a lot, and so does the movement. And like you're saying, it's all this dance. It's all about this movement, this dance that we all, it's natural to all of us. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
So Eva, I'm curious about the Gnosis part of your talk, because it's something that can't be forced, but you can try to cultivate it, but then ultimately, it's something, I guess, synchronistic. So how do you work with developing that in your workshops?
Well, that's an interesting question, because in a way, I'm not sure that we have any control over Gnosis. I think it's a state of grace, really, that comes through on its own. And I don't think it's something that we can will with our ego on the ego level at all. I think that it's something that it can come through by, for instance, taking the dreams or taking the images, as Jeff was pointing to, imagination, whether it comes through dreams or visions or mythology, stories, and then translating them through ritual. And I think ritual can be, or also divination methods might be one thing we could use. Divination methods might bring through an experience of Gnosis with bringing it into form, bringing it into this world. But I don't think that you can will it. I don't think it's, I think it comes on its own, is my sense.
Yeah. I'm just, I asked you that because I'm working with some Gnostic texts at the moment, and I think some of them were intended, you know, like in the way that Japanese koans are intended to have you like have an experience that, you know, may or may not happen, as you said, but there are ways to create a vessel for the possibility of it happening to be,
Mhm.
you
Well,
know, brighter than just watching TV.
yes. I mean, I would think that if we pay attention to the synchronicities, that might be one way in our lives, right? We pay attention to the dreams, we pay attention to the synchronicities, because when we have an experience of synchronicity, then we are having an experience of the Gnosis.
Right. So you're saying pay attention to that, to the psychoid realm.
Yeah, so pay attention to to the dreams, which the Gnosis is even I think is a knowing. It's a knowing that comes from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it comes into the subtle body. But I think that Jeff kind of nailed it when he said it's going to come through imagination to some extent. That might be one way we could invite it. But I do think ultimately it's an experience of grace. Comes unbidden.
Yeah.
I know if anyone has anything to say more to expand on that.
You know, from my experience, it's you can never use the word gnosis at any moment and expect it to happen then, but it's tended to be around using imagination, thinking of something that requires imagination, that or and emotion, you know, at the same time. At least, you know, thinking about something in a special way. I don't know what to make of that spiritual. For instance, just meditation by itself, not as thinking even about gnosis, but just using the imagination in that process seemed to make me not how to say, and I want to use the word open because it's not exactly it. Lighter might be the best word. Lightness. That's the word that comes to mind when I think about it.
Well, it's certainly beyond thinking, though. It's not. It's outside of the realm of thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think that the experience of emotion, of feeling emotion, is inevitably has to be part of it, because you're going to be moved by it and changed when you have an experience like that. And my experience in my life is they don't happen very often. You know, it really is a grace, and it does come when it comes.
Mm-hmm.
And then it may take years and years or a lifetime to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
It just, you know, this idea of myth, that's the collective imagination in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, we can have a personal myth, but if you can also have a myth that transcends the personal, and it becomes the collective story that carries emotion, that creates a mood. The story itself has a mood.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking of a myth, and what popped into my mouth was a myth of Eros and Psyche. And that myth seems to it's informed so many fairy tales. And I mean, I've just brought that one up because I've worked with it, but definitely it's a Greek myth, but I think it must be more ancient than that because it seems to repeat in different forms. And I guess fairy tales are more culturally oriented, but the mythology is archetypal, isn't it? It's archetypal. It's coming. I mean, that particular myth is in a way how love, and it's not personal love, really. It can be, but it isn't. How love comes to the soul and illuminates the soul.
But we also, it is personal, and it's
yes,
beyond personal.
it's it's transpersonal.
I have a question. This is an experiential question. Does anybody of you experience love that doesn't seem personal?
Yes.
Good for you.
To a place, to a setting, to a flower, to some image that is beyond your capacity to actually describe it. It's I suppose it's beauty or complexity that makes you love, just feel.
And that he hits you as deeply as personal love?
Oh, deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Deeper, yeah.
Deeper.
Interesting.
I was wondering about Gnosis. Is it something like the encounter with the sacred, the way you're describing it, Marian, Eva? I mean, it seems like very much like the encounter with something you revere, or just the sacred, that you can't describe it. You just know you've had this meaningful encounter that was way beyond the everyday, way beyond the beautiful, almost life-changing. Is that similar to the Gnosis?
Yeah, I think yes. I think everything you said would describe the Gnosis. And it isn't the Gnosis. I mean, it's a Gnosis in a way because we all experience it in a different form. And yes, I mean our own personal stories, our personal mythologies that we come in with, and how they intersect with something that is transpersonal, larger than ourselves. Like when you have an experience like that, people have it through, of course, birth and death, because one of the things is that I didn't mention this, but on the tree, the gnosis is the passageway between life and death. Or if you were being born, or you were giving birth, you would have this experience of moving through this birth canal, this passageway that is a different, both spiritual, but also emotional, also physical. I think it would probably intersect on all of those, and all of those. Certainly the image would be, it almost seems like yeah. But without the emotion, you couldn't really call it. The knowing would come through experience. I mean, I don't think that there's words for it, but I think you've described it well. I know anyone else has anything that they can expand on that?
I think of it as a felt sense.
Oh,
That was a good one that worked for me for a long time.
Felt sense.
Felt sense.
what kind of?
Felt.
Felt
Well,
sense.
and for me, it was life. It's life changing. It required me to unlearn everything I thought I knew. I mean, entirely, just, and so it's all of that, all of the senses, all of that, everything. It says, it's different, there's more. Reset in a way, and wonderful in a way that can't be described. It's all at the same time. And in that same instant. It's instantaneous. And all of this, and then years of trying to unfold all of it. So that's the way.
Yeah.
That's the way I.
It's difficult because there's no language that can describe an experience like this. And I think this is one of the reasons why Jung wrote the Red Book the way he did. He had to do it through these dialogues and also through the art that to be able to access it. Because if we don't find a way through art, through music, through dance, through dialogue, some way to bring it into manifestation, it can disappear eventually. Experience might change you, but you won't be able to then it can be a roadmap if you work with it.
Yes.
So Eva, why do myths die?
The thing that comes to mind is I think they die when they become stereotypes. When the culture is in the midst of a transformation, as we are right now, the old myths no longer have their they have lost the spirit. They've lost their essence. Was that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we are definitely in that Kairos moment, as you pointed out.
Well, the transformation of consciousness too, I think, has people think that the myth has died, but it hasn't. I heard somebody speak there in your old hometown of Boulder, Jeff, and this person was railing against magical and mythic consciousness, as if we had to kill it in order to be the rational human beings that we are now and have become. And
I guess that I wasn't saying that. When I said a myth dies, it means that a particular story no longer carries or evokes the affect that it once did. It no longer provides a sense of, it's a cosmology that orients us. It informs us of our relationship to both the personal and the transpersonal. And those do come and go. They do change. The myth, the mythic consciousness doesn't go away. But there's a yearning for a new story.
A new story. And I think that's exactly where we are right now on the entire globe. I think, didn't Joseph Campbell talk about the new myth having something to do with the entire earth? He used that image of that
Right.
of the globe. That we're in between myths right now. And I meant to talk about this, but it's happening anyway. We are in the birth canal. We are in the in-between on a global level, cosmologically, but also personally. I mean, none of us really know exactly where we are. We're in between. We're betwixt and between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe myths have their, we saw lots of spirals today that sometimes they're in the light and sometimes they fade into the dark, and then they're in the light and then they're in the dark. I mean, in my book, I had never heard until I don't know, I started digging into this, of the myth of Gabricus and Bea. Or it's actually called the myth of Arislaeus. But Gabricus and Bea are the alchemical elements within it, and there's the process of dissolution that happens, and this myth didn't live as much as Psyche and Eros, or what's the one that Freud made famous? Oedipus, the myth, Oedipus myth. But I think moving into the future, it's a telling, or it's a pre-telling of what we would now call endosymbiosis. And so I think this myth might have its day in the sun again once we become more conscious of our own endosymbiotic processes. At least that's my hope. So yeah, I think they come and they go depending on like what process humanity is going through at the during the age that we're in, whether it's the age of Pisces or the age of Aquarius. That's my story, and I may or may not stick to it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that particular myth, but if you take a myth like the myth of Osiris, for instance, I think that is still very much in different forms. Cultural forms will change the story, right?
Yeah.
But the overall mythology of right now, we're certainly in a period of dismemberment. And the myth of our day needs to be, how do we remember that's which has been dismembered? Because we've never been here before. We've never had, at least in recorded history, a time when we're in danger of extinction. And that plays out for each of us very much on a personal level and a bodily level, as well as on, they'll come through dream, right? I mean, it comes through on so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking it's like a Tower of Babel.
That same image was in my head, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fragmentation that happened at that time.
Fragmentation, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have to be reborn, right?
The argumentativeness that's going on.
Yeah, the division. I guess we're missing the debate tonight.
Yeah.
The argumentativeness.
or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How pointless.
More or less.
So anybody out there in Zoom land have any questions that you can unmute and
yeah, I put out an image in the chat.
Yes, I saw that. I don't know if everyone can see it, but I'll click on it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't find a better one because this is
No,
on
it's okay.
Chrome.
I just I'm not sure how to bring it in. Can everybody see it?
I think if everyone just clicks on it, they'll be able to see it on their screen.
Yeah,
But it can't be shared. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at it here in
Yes.
Monterey.
I can
Is this
see it.
Shiva and Shakti?
Yeah, so this is the myth in Eastern philosophy of Shiva, who, and this is one form of Shiva which is worshipped. That's like he's half woman and half man. Ardhanarishvara, that's how you call him. Ardha means half.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's the yin and the yang. Yeah. And then, of course, he's rooted down below. So it when you were talking, and so it just reminded me of this in, this image in Eastern philosophy, which is like, yeah, quite popular actually. It's also used in popular culture.
Yeah, and it's
And
remarkable because it's the same as
yeah,
as the hermetic, as the
yeah,
hermetic. You're holding, the feminine and the masculine in balance, and yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I'm talking about. So that, that's so extraordinary, isn't it? Oh, you got it up there. Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
And she's holding the lotus in her left hand. Is that?
Yeah, it's the lotus. So that's the feminine side, and the other side is that kind of a weapon, a trishul. It's called trishul, which is the masculine. It's kind
Yes.
of signifying the two sides, and then it's rooted. So you draw from the ground, all the energy, and yeah, and then the light coming in from. So I thought it was very similar to the tree of life that you spoke
I
about.
mean, it's the tree of life itself. The reason I use it, I mean, I use it as a meditation tool, and have for 40 years. I mean, it's an archetypal image, and as is this. This is an archetypal. This is an archetype. So, the image is different. The background story might be related, as you're saying, to the culture, but the energy of it is identical.
Yeah.
Different perspective on the same thing.
So speak up, David.
I think it just felt to me just like a different perspective on the same thing.
Well, in some of my research, I think this was actually even named, and I can't remember where, this particular image. Yeah. So yes, thank you for that, because yeah, I mean, and it's fluid. It's fluid. Like there's this movement.
And as you brought up in the very beginning, the necessity of holding the opposites. They don't annihilate one another. They complement one another.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting one. I was thinking about that, Lisa. Actually, I was kind of contemplating the idea of, we talk about complementarity versus the tension, and right now in this time of division, we seem to have a difficult time in seeing the complementarity of the opposites.
Yeah, well, I wrote a book to help bring that into consciousness.
Sometimes that stuff doesn't even seem like opposites to me. I had an insight about my position relative to a friend of mine the other day, and I am in front of him and pulling towards something forward, and I'm also behind him trying to catch up and grow up. And both of these are absolutely true. They don't cancel each other at all.
Right. Right, yeah.
And they don't even seem like opposites. It's just two different places where I am at the same time.
Yeah, it's the both and. Yeah.
On the Mobius strip.
Well, yeah, the Mobius strip is also, of course, a figure 8. And so it really does describe how the energy moves, like from the above to below and from side to side. In fact, in the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, I've mentioned this before, I think at your book launch, Lisa, is that both the Magician card, the number 1, and the Strength card, who's an intermediary, the Strength card, is placed actually as you're coming down the tree, linking the two sides. They both have the figure 8 above them. Not the figure 8, it's the infinity symbol.
Yeah.
But it links these two sides, right?
So I've put out another link now.
Oh, I
So
see.
So the myth goes that, when the two sides, the opposites come together. So the myth goes that when the two sides come together, the yin and the yang, and kind of you are able to hold polarities in a balance, is when the dance happens.
It's
So
when
the
the dance.
Yeah, it's when the dance happens. So this is like is when Shiva breaks out into a dance, and it's called Tanda. It's the cosmic dance that he performs after he's able to contain the opposites inside his body.
And there you go. I mean, that's the key, isn't it? To contain the opposites within our body and within our psyche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when the dance happens. That's
That's
when
when
you,
the dance
that's when you dance. Yeah, that's when.
And I
yeah.
think that's we were talking about this recently, actually, that it is more of a dance. It can be more of a dance than it is a holding of tension of opposites. The caduceus is a dance as well. I mean, right? You see these two snakes dancing together, and it's that same movement that you're seeing here, of this back and forth movement of DNA, of the Kundalini, and all of it.
Of electromagnetism?
Yes.
I have at home I have something, it's called an Indo board, and it's a roller with a plywood board on it, and you stand on it like a skateboard or a surfboard, and the roller rolls underneath. And it works a lot better if you just keep it moving.
Like surfing, I guess. I mean, I'm not a surfer, but if I was, I imagine when you're surfing, you have to keep moving and you have to be riding literally the wave, right, to keep your balance. And I suppose we're all surfers now. Just living in these times required of us that we become surfers.
But I had a comment and a question about this end of times ideas, because humans have often had this idea of the end of the world, the apocalypse, and that certainly in Christianity, when they're expecting the end of the world recurrently, and more recently, like in 2000, 2001, 1999 to 2000, there was the expectations of the stocks and the internet blowing up, and then in the plagues in Europe, and followed by the Renaissance, so that it's like everything has to really go into a very bad scene for there to be a renewal, and we're experiencing that now, and the myth would be, of course, renewal, but it would take whatever form it takes, but that has been a recurrent cycle through human life, I think.
Yeah, and that's what the alchemists called the Nigredo. And so again, we are in a global Nigredo, and that particular period, I mean, I think that was actually part of the Renaissance, because I don't know exactly 13th century or to 17th, or 14th to 17th would have been the Renaissance. So there was both there was the death of an old perspective, of old way of interacting with life itself, and a renewal that came. But and I don't know, it brought us into the age of so-called enlightenment. So I don't know about that. So.
And it was actually through the rediscovery of the ancient Greek texts that had been lost, but the Arabic versions were found and retranslated, and so these renewals often have like a return to things ancient, and I think we're going through something similar. That ancient, Hermeticism is blossoming again. You look online, and like nobody talked about Hermeticism when I was young.
Anybody wants to make gold. But you bring up the Age of Enlightenment from 14th and 17th, and it brings up
17th and onward, I should say, Age of Enlightenment, Age of Reason.
I meant the Renaissance, and I was thinking, it affected the indigenous peoples of the Americas in the opposite way.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that in many cultures, it was the fulfillment of their a prophecy. When the Spanish in particular came to the New World and pretty much destroyed the indigenous cultures everywhere. So that was a fulfillment of their prophecies.
Yeah, but that prophecy, I mean, it's interesting you bring that up, because that prophecy would have come from a gnosis. It would have come from the dreams of that particular indigenous group. So they were receiving a gnosis that was tragic and devastating, of course. And I think that something on that level, I mean,
Well, it's like Jung was encountering all those people right before the war who were dreaming of these cataclysms of the war, right? So he derived the gnosis from the dreams of his patients, or they had the gnosis.
Well, he had his experience in 1913, right? He had his own vision of the war coming, when he thought he had gone into a psychosis, and it turned out that it was a true vision of the devastation that to come.
Interestingly enough, I saw the Georgia O'Keeffe exhibit at the Art Institute in Chicago this past week, and she had a very similar image to that one of Jung's right before the war.
Red Book 125. Yeah.
There you go. John even has the page, the image number memorized. So it is kind of archetypal.
Yeah, it is.
I was pondering the Renaissance as occurring after the Black Death. And it was the Black Death that profoundly changed consciousness if we want to express it that way for the moment, not only in Europe, but throughout the entire expanse of the Black Death.
Well, it was the Black Death. It was, also the compass, the printing press, the fall of Constantinople, on and on. Everything was kind of happening all at the same time that, you know, and of course the Reformation that came out of that as well. So the rise of the middle class, for that matter, right? So everything it was like a confluence. I think after the there was the Great Fire of London, right? That ended ended in England, ended finally ended the bubonic plague.
I didn't know that.
Well, we're in an extraordinary time right now. I mean, as well. I mean, it really does feel like the ground beneath our feet is not solid, and we're in this place of not knowing. Um, yeah.
Oh, so we have to surf on ground now?
Well, before we go, I don't know if I have a question exactly, but I have an image of the tree of life, as you described it, Eva, as a map. And I see it as a map through this quagmire. Well, I see it as a map that will help us through this period that we're in, but I don't know exactly how to follow the path. That's my question. That's my feeling at the moment. That's a question. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that I have the answer, because I see the alchemy in the tree, but we know that on a personal level, those of us who study alchemy and have worked with it, and you know, you can be in a dark night. We've talked about this a lot, and pop into coming out of it into a whitening, into an understanding, and the next week you're back in the dark night again. So none of this works really. Maybe on a bigger, maybe as you move through your life and you have a broader perspective, you can see.
Well, so the other thing you can do, David, is work with tarot, because each of the tarot cards corresponds to a link, a connection in the tree of life.
Yes.
So
yes.
each person's path would be different. So
that's right.
You work with tarot to get your path, and I work with it to get my path.
Each of us will.
It's kind of a cool multi-dimensional map in that way.
22 plus 10.
Well, you know what we didn't get into, and of course, yes, the tarot is certainly on one level is a really good way to work with linking these cosmological energies. But there are 4 trees. It is Jacob's ladder, and so there are different realms, and there's some that we can work with, but some of them are way out of our reach because it's in what we call the divine. So it's, you know, we kind of feel our way through little by little. I mean, it's constantly learning, but I mean, I don't know that there's a direct map. I mean, of course, the astrology also arises out of the tree, and if anything, the astrological correspondences are helpful to link the archetypal with what's happening on the person.
So actually, to follow up with that, I was curious at the very beginning when you linked Pluto with Doth. Could you say more about that? Because I didn't quite get that correspondence.
Yes, I didn't go into a lot of detail, but one of the names for that particular for Doth is it's the abyss. So it is that's why I put up that Adore image. It's, you know, we're at the edge, we're edge walkers right now. So we're at the edge of the abyss. And Pluto has to do with this death rebirth process. So when you're going through a death rebirth process, that is related to, that's what Pluto is. So it seems like the appropriate place to put that planetary energy is in that canal between life and death. Yeah. And the other thing is that as far as tarot goes, the high priestess is the one that crosses the desert, and carries the water of life, and the knowledge, she carries that. And I think in the Rider-Waite, she is carrying the scroll of the Torah, or so she's carrying the knowledge from one realm to another, but she's not able to manifest it. It gets manifested at the other point with the world of the universe card, finally. But I mean, it's much more complicated than that. But because of course there's this, you can see that's the feminine, but the feminine is always dancing with the masculine.
All right, we've got 1 more minute. Does anybody have anything burning to say?
Let's dance.
Always, yes. And thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for having me, first of all, hosting me, and thank you so much for the participation. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm sorry if I overdid it with the slides. I cut them down to half. I always have too many.
Thank you for the wonderful.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Now on to the debates.
No.
On to music and dancing then.
Yes, we need music.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Everywhere.
Thank you.
Sleep tight.